and the untold stories are finally brought into light. Here we dive deep into the real cases that shock, haunt, and move us. From missing persons, unsolved mysteries, to heartbreaking journeys of victims who deserve to be remembered. We just want to tell the stories, to honor them, because behind every headline is a life, a family, and truth that deserves to be known. If you believe that every story matters, that the pursuit of justice should never be forgotten, you're in the right place. Subscribe, stay curious, and join us as we bring you true crime with heart, with truth, and with purpose. She was a young mom, talented pilot, a woman whose dreams were just taking flight. But in a quiet mountain town in Colorado, her bright future was stolen in a most unthinkable way. A disappearance that shook her family, shattered the community, and revealed a chilling betrayal no one ever saw coming. This is a story of Kelsey Berreth, her life, her love, and the justice her family fought so hard to find, because Kelsey's voice was silenced, but her story still remains to be heard. 29-year-old Kelsey Berreth lived in Woodland Park, Colorado. A country girl at heart, from a young age, she loved driving tractors and bucking bales, chasing adventures, whatever she could. Her passion was for travel, and the outdoors led her to her career that fit her spirit perfectly. She became a pilot and flight instructor, a job that let her see the world above. In 2016, through a dating website, Kelsey met 32-year-old Patrick Frazee, a Colorado boy who lived with his mother, Sheila, on a 35-acre ranch. Patrick trained cattle, dogs, and cared for horses and donkeys.
Our dogs, they'll be our dogs to train this fall and winter.
Living in a rugged life that naturally appealed to Kelsey, they hit it off right away, and soon after they got engaged. In October 2017, Kelsey gave birth to their daughter, Kaylee. Kelsey's mother, Cheryl, described her daughter as a low-key, not one for big show. She didn't want an elaborate wedding. She just wanted a simple ceremony, something private between them and God. But despite the engagement and a new baby, not much else seemed to move forward. Kelsey and Patrick remained in a long-distance relationship. Kaylee lived with Kelsey, and Kelsey would drive to Patrick's ranch on her days off. Patrick wanted Kelsey to move in, but not just with him. He lived with his mother, and Kelsey made it clear she wanted to be just the three of them, not four. Without the resolution, moving plans stalled. As months passed, friends noticed Kelsey's bright hopes for a future family life slowly dimming. She confided in them she suspected Patrick might be talking to his ex-girlfriend. Though she couldn't confirm it, it was just another worry piled onto her plate. Being a new mom is overwhelming enough, but with Patrick increasingly distant and showing no signs of changing, Kelsey found herself juggling everything alone. Friends said Patrick seemed to have emotionally checked out, but Kelsey, ever hopeful, wasn't ready to give up on their family. By late 2018, as Christmas lights started twinkling around the town, Kelsey tried to push her troubles aside. She focused on the joys of the season, spending precious time with Kaylee, now just over a year old, and her mother, Cheryl. But Cheryl couldn't shake a glowing sense of unease. She hadn't heard from Kelsey since Thanksgiving. That seemed completely unlike her. Yes, Kelsey was busy, but the silence felt wrong. Following her mother's instinct, Cheryl contacted the local police and requested a welfare check. When officers arrived at Kelsey's home, they found her car parked outside. Inside, they noticed a half-eaten food on the counter and unwashed dishes, as if someone had left in the middle of a daily life. Most of her belongings were still there, clothes, bags, personal items untouched. But two things were missing: her purse and her phone. Police said there were no obvious signs of foul play, but given Cheryl's concern, a missing persons report was filed. Kelsey's information quickly began circulating. Cheryl recounted the last time she spoke to her daughter was on Thanksgiving morning, November 22nd. Kelsey had been baking cinnamon buns, chatting happily about her holiday dinner plans. Nothing seemed amiss. Later in the afternoon, Kelsey went shopping with Kaylee at a local Safeway, picked up the last few minute items. She texted Patrick too, offering sweet potatoes if he wanted some for dinner. This was the last time Kelsey was seen alive. Media coverage ramped up quickly. 29-year-old Casey, a beloved flight instructor, a mother of 1-year-old, had vanished. News reports described her as last seen at Safeway, and a Facebook page was set up to gather tips and spread awareness.
29-year-old Kelsey Berreth has been missing since Thanksgiving. The flight instructor and mother of a 1-year-old was last seen at this Safeway in Woodland Park, Colorado, near her home.
If she's out there, doesn't want to be contacted, just let us know that she's safe, and we'll let her family know.
A vigil Sunday organized by her brother-in-law was held in Washington State, where some of her family lives.
If they see her anywhere, please say something.
A Facebook page has been set up for the missing mom with updates on her case.
Naturally, police turned their attention to Patrick. His account shocked them. He claimed just before Thanksgiving, Kelsey had ended their relationship. He said they weren't meshing anymore, but they planned to co-parent Kaylee 50-50. When asked about Kaylee's whereabouts, Patrick explained that he and Kaylee had met up briefly in an alley to hand Kaylee over for the day after their supposed breakup. He said that he had taken Kaylee to his family's ranch for Thanksgiving, but Kelsey didn't join them. According to Patrick, he had sparse communication with Kelsey after that. A few text exchanges. At one point, he messaged her saying, "If this is truly what you want, I'll respect your wishes and give you space." But investigators immediately saw red flags. Why would Kelsey, who had been planning Thanksgiving dinner, shopping for groceries, even talk about the wedding dress with her mother on just days earlier, suddenly cut ties? Patrick floated a theory. He suggested that Kelsey struggled with depression and might even have checked herself into a rehab or drug abuse. Friends and family were stunned. Kelsey had no history of depression, no history of drug problems, and absolutely no history of abandoning her child. Cheryl firmly believed it was Patrick, not Kelsey, who had initiated distance in their relationship. As police dug deeper, Patrick's story continued to unravel. One clue stood out to them. Kelsey's boss told them she had texted him excitedly, full of emojis and exclamation points, that Patrick would be attending their upcoming company holiday party. Clearly, she had still been planning a future with him. Then, without warning, her boss received a second text saying she would be taking a week off with no explanation. Meanwhile, Kelsey's phone was being pinged in Idaho, 800 miles away. This wasn't just a case of a woman leaving to find herself. Something was terribly wrong. Police Chief Miles DeYoung soon held a press conference, laying out what they knew.
Kelsey's been missing and been reported missing by her mother, Cheryl, since Sunday, December 2nd at about 12:37 p.m. Officers were able to contact her place of employment at Doss Aviation down in Pueblo, Colorado, and were advised that they had received a text from Kelsey's phone on the 25th of November stating that she would not be into work the following week. Cheryl did reach out to Kelsey's fiance, Patrick Frazee, and he called her back saying that he hadn't heard from her since November 25th when Kelsey texted him. Reports are correct that Kelsey's phone gave a location near Gooding, Idaho on November 25th at about 5:13 in the afternoon. We've executed search warrants on Kelsey's home as well as both of her vehicles. We are treating Kelsey's disappearance as a missing persons case at this time. We have not identified anyone as a suspect and are asking the public for any information that might help us find her. And at this time, Kelsey's mother, Cheryl, would like to say a few words.
I'd just like to talk to you a little bit about Kelsey. She's not the kind that runs off. This is completely out of character. Kelsey loves her God, she loves her family and friends, and she loves her job. She's reliable, considerate, and honest. We've created the Facebook page Missing Mother, Kelsey Berreth, as a site that gets her face out there, that's used to spread the word that she's missing. And we'd like to ask everyone to please share it. Don't use it as a place to speculate, interrogate, or to dog the administrators. We're all doing our best to get this information out. We're doing our best to respond to the questions and so forth, but that's what the police force is there for, and for the press site. Our sole goal is to get Kelsey out in front of everyone. Like I said, she doesn't run off, and someone knows where she's at. Kelsey, we just want you home. Call us if you can. and we won't quit looking.
Chief, I understand that Patrick was invited today. Why is he not here?
That is a question you'd have to ask him.
Is he being cooperative?
Yes, at this time, yes. Any other questions?
Chief, I understand she was invited. Is there any indication that she may have?
Very good question. Yes, she is a flight instructor down in Pueblo. All airplanes are accounted for. There is no indication that she has taken off in an airplane and gone somewhere at this point.
Where's the baby?
The baby is with the baby's father, Patrick.
Robert's in her bed. Do we think this is suspicious at this point?
At this point, it's a missing persons case. I have nothing to indicate other than it is a missing persons case.
But no one had seen Kelsey since Thanksgiving Day, and troubling, her phone pinged in the same afternoon, not in Colorado, but near Gooding, Idaho. Police had searched her home and both of her vehicles. They still treated it as a missing persons case, but privately, suspicions were building. In the scenes, Cheryl and Kelsey's brother Clint weren't waiting around. They knew Kelsey's habits too well and decided to launch their own investigation. When they entered Kelsey's town home, they were hit with a heat wave. The thermostat had been cranked up unnaturally high. The cinnamon rolls Kelsey had baked on Thanksgiving morning still sat uneaten on the counter. Oddly, the refrigerator looked like it had been freshly wiped down, streaks still visible. The bathroom mat was also missing. Then Clint spotted something on the toilet, which looked like blood. They called the police back immediately. This time, investigators came armed with luminol and a cadaver dog. They sprayed the chemical all around the house. The place lit up. The blood that was invisible to the naked eye was everywhere. Later, DNA testing confirmed it was Kelsey's blood, and a lot of it. Then the case took a dramatic turn. Investigators now believe Kelsey had been murdered inside her home, and the search for her shifted into criminal investigation. The FBI was called in, vigils were held, and a $225,000 reward was offered for any information. And quietly, the police, there was now one person they were looking at very closely, and that was Patrick. Patrick hadn't attended any press conferences, he hadn't helped with any searches, also he hadn't even called the police to check on the investigation. Meanwhile, surveillance footage from Kelsey's neighbor painted a different story than Patrick's version. The footage shows Patrick entering Kelsey's home with Kaylee on Thanksgiving, right around the time he claimed that they had met in the alley. Hours later, he returned alone, and investigators dug deeper. More damning evidence surfaced. Phone records showed that Kelsey and Patrick's phones had been traveling together for several days after she disappeared. And those pings? Well, they were just in Idaho. Texts were sent from Kelsey's phone to her boss, Patrick and Cheryl, all from Idaho. Police began to wonder who had Kelsey's phone and why was it 800 miles away. On December 14th, the investigation escalated. The FBI executed a search warrant at Patrick's property. A huge section of land were dug up, heavy machinery tearing through the dirt. Investigators desperate to find anything that could lead them to Kelsey. At the same time, detectives zeroed in on Patrick's digital footprint. More search warrants were issued. For this time, it was his cell phone records. They were looking for any clue, any thread that might explain the strange Idaho connection. And finally, one phone number stood out, and it belonged to a nurse living in Twin Falls, Idaho, and her name was Krystal Lee Kenney. The deeper investigation looked, the clearer the picture came. Krystal and Patrick hasn't just crossed paths briefly. They had been locked in on an on-again and off-again relationship for over a decade. Krystal had recently finalized her divorce, and around that time, her relationship with Patrick had intensified. Her ex-husband didn't hesitate to fill in the blanks for the investigators, confirming the long-standing affair. Meanwhile, forensic analysis of Kelsey's phone records painted a damning trail. Messages sent from Kelsey's phone to ones designed to make it seem like she was still alive had been sent by Krystal. The text pinged off the very same Idaho towers her own phone used. And now it seemed Kelsey's phone had been destroyed, her digital trail snuffed out. Was an affair enough motive to want Kelsey dead? Police weren't entirely sure yet, and most critical, they still didn't have a body. Still, suspicion tightened around Patrick. Woodland Park police returned to his ranch for what they described publicly as a routine follow-up. But behind the scenes, they were getting close.
Woodland Park police returned to Patrick Frazee's home today. A routine follow-up, they say, as they continue to look for his missing fiancée, Kelsey Berreth. They spent the weekend searching his property, and Flora sent a new drone video from our sister station in Colorado Springs shows the aftermath of that search, including the torn-up earth in front of the house. Investigators did not find Kelsey in that search, though they said they do want to talk to Frazee face-to-face.
Investigators were back at the home of Kelsey Berreth, the mother missing from Woodland Park since Thanksgiving. Police and agents with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation were seen going in and out of that house this evening. But if investigators are close to a break in this case, they're not talking about it.
Good evening, Kristen and Kyle. Yeah, police put out a news release saying that Kelsey's still missing and there are no arrests in her disappearance. The only new activity really down here was the sight of investigators entering and leaving Kelsey's home. They left with brown bags, but they didn't say what they took. Now, an evidence response team was also seen leaving the police station earlier this evening. That's where we are. Woodland Park police, they did again in that news release tonight say they're following new information that comes in daily and they're making progress, but it's not clear exactly what that means. Now, today marks day 28 since Kelsey's disappearance. She was last seen shopping at a Safeway with her one-year-old daughter, not far from where we are now. Investigators say that her fiance, Patrick Frazee, told them he did see Kelsey later that day when he went to pick up their daughter, and investigators actually searched his property earlier, or actually last week, and they wrapped that search up over the weekend with no findings or anything. Kyle, Kristen?
It certainly looks like something's shifting, something's changing with that activity. All right, Jordan.
Drone footage captured the scene. Patch on earth freshly torn up across the property. Investigator in hazmat suits combed the area, brown evidence bags carried away. They were no longer just searching, they were building a case. As investigators dug deep into Patrick and Krystal's connection, a chilling new detail surfaced. One of Krystal's close friends came forward, feeling she could no longer be silenced. Krystal had confided something deeply disturbing. Patrick had told her, "I need you to take care of my baby mama." Both women understood exactly what he meant. Patrick just didn't want Krystal to take care of Kelsey. He wanted her dead. Patrick had spun a narrative painting Kelsey as abusive, drug-addicted mother. He told Krystal he was trying to save his daughter, but he needed Krystal to do the dirty work for him. As the deeper the investigators looked, the more it made sense. Patrick had a mountain of financial problems. He had just defaulted on his $72,000 loan. He hadn't paid $700 monthly child support payments he owed since July. And chillingly, there was something else. Patrick was listed as sole beneficiary on a large life insurance policy Kelsey had recently taken out. Full custody, financial gain, an ongoing affair. Patrick had motive and plenty of it. Armed with everything they had uncovered, investigators went back to Krystal, and this time they laid it all out for her. Faced with the mountain of evidence, Krystal broke. She finally admitted full truth. Yes, she and Patrick were having a long-running affairs for years. And yes, Patrick had begged her more than once to kill Kelsey for him. The original plan was chilling. Krystal was supposed to poison Kelsey's coffee and leave it at her front door, pretending to be a good Samaritan dropping off a gift. When the plan failed, Patrick told her to find another way, even suggesting simply beating Kelsey to death. But Krystal never followed through, and Patrick, growing frustrated, decided he would carry it out himself. Now, realizing the gravity of what she was part of, Krystal agreed to help the police. She would tell them everything, walk them through Kelsey's home step by step, revealing exactly what happened. But the one condition, in exchange for her cooperation, she pled guilty only to the fair lesser charge of tampering with evidence, carrying the maximum sentence of just 3 years. Prosecutors were torn. They decided to make a deal with it, but they needed her testimony to finally bring Patrick to justice. Ultimately, they agreed. Using Krystal's admission, along with the mountain of cell phone records they had collected, investigators were finally able to piece together a timeline. and their case against Patrick was getting stronger day by day. It all centered around November 22nd, 2018, Thanksgiving Day, the last day Kelsey was seen alive. There was a flurry of contact between Patrick and Kelsey's phones starting from 1 in the morning and at 9:37 in the morning. Kelsey texted Patrick. Later, the two spoke briefly over the phone, just a few minutes, during which she chatted about Thanksgiving plans, the food she was preparing, and her excitement for the holiday. Around 12:30 p.m., Patrick called Kelsey again. This call lasted only 30 seconds. Patrick would later claim that after the call, they met briefly in the alley to swap custody of Kaylee, and that was the last time he ever saw Kelsey. But now the investigators knew this was a lie. Home records showed that Kelsey's and Patrick's phones were connected to the same tower between 1 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. that Thanksgiving afternoon. At 1:24 p.m., surveillance footage captures Patrick entering Kelsey's front door with her. What happened next was chilling beyond belief. According to Krystal, once inside, Patrick blindfolded Kelsey under the guise of playing a game, asking her to smell different scented candles and guess their scents. It was meant to distract her. Then, without warning, he grabbed the baseball bat, and in Patrick's own words, he started swinging. He beat Kelsey to death brutally, knocking out several of her teeth in the process, all while their 1-year-old daughter, Kaylee, was playing in the next room. Kelsey's final words, according to Patrick, were heartbreaking. "Please stop." After the murder, Patrick didn't panic, he didn't run. Instead, he calmly took Kaylee and went to Walmart, where he then topped up his gas tank. Caught once again on camera, acting as if nothing had happened. Later, around 3:30 p.m., Patrick returned to Kelsey's house alone. Once inside, he made 2 important phone calls. One was to his mother, Sheila, and the other to Krystal. Krystal later told investigators that when Patrick called her, he didn't have to explain anything. He simply said she needs to come to Colorado because there was a mess to clean up, and Krystal understood exactly what he meant. Krystal knew exactly what was expected of her. She packed up bleach, gloves, cleaning supplies, then set off on a grueling 13-hour overnight drive from Idaho to Colorado. Meanwhile, after hanging up on the phone, Patrick set about hiding what he had done. He forced Kelsey's body into a black plastic tote. The same tote later captured on surveillance footage loaded into the back of his truck. Throughout the Thanksgiving Day, cameras picked up Patrick entering and exiting Kelsey's home 11 times. Phone records show that both Patrick and Kelsey's cell phones continued moving together, this time heading toward the place called Nash Ranch, where he temporarily hid her body. After stashing the tote, Patrick did what only made the horror more chilling. He went on and enjoyed the Thanksgiving dinner with his daughter and family, as if nothing had happened. When Krystal finally arrived at Kelsey's townhome, the scene inside was almost too much for her to take in. Blood was everywhere, spattered across the walls, soaked into the floors, covering the kitchen appliances and furniture. Krystal began cleaning. But later, Krystal admitted something else to investigators. She said she deliberately left some spots of blood behind. She said she wanted Patrick to get caught. She wanted the truth to come out eventually. By November 24th, 2 days after Kelsey's murder, the cover-up entered its final and most horrifying phase. Around 5 p.m., after hours spent cleaning Kelsey's home, Krystal and Patrick drove back to Nash Ranch to retrieve Krystal's body. Her remains were still stuffed inside the black plastic tote. They loaded it into Patrick's truck and drove it back to his property. Then, they prepared to destroy the evidence. Patrick placed the tote containing Kelsey's body into a large aluminum trough. Krystal later told investigators that she watched as Kelsey's Bible and even some of Kaylee's toys were tossed into the fire too. Standing on the porch, Patrick's mother, Sheila, watched the fire burn. She never intervened. Later, she would plead the fifth when questioned about this. The cover-up didn't stop there. Patrick instructed Krystal to take the cell phone back to her to Idaho to continue pushing the narrative that Kelsey had left voluntarily and maybe even hint that she was suicidal. The web of lies was growing, but so was the case against him. Krystal also led the investigators around Patrick's ranch, pointing out exactly where everything had happened, where the fire burned, where they collected the wood, where they doused everything in gasoline and motor oil.
This is where the aluminum trough was, and this is where the burn occurred.
Where is it now, if you can direct us to where Patrick got the trough?
I don't know where he got the trough from.
Where were you? Was it here?
The trough was here on his property. I was down at the bottom of the hill.
Were you present when he started the fires?
Yes, I was.
Okay. I believe yesterday you said that you also collected wood and put into the burn pit?
Yes, I did.
Did you recall, or did you go anywhere else, or did you see Patrick go anywhere else? What about the accelerant? Do you know what that, obviously...
It was gas.
Okay.
And then he also threw in motor oil.
You had also mentioned that at one point Patrick's mom came out and stood on the deck. Looking over towards the house, can you tell me where you saw his mom?
I could just see her stuck out between the two trees.
We're going to go ahead and turn the camera off now, and it is 9 a.m.
Piece by a horrifying piece. Krystal's best friend, the one she had quietly confided in, later admitted she carried deep regrets. She wished she had come forward with what she knew before anything had happened to Kelsey. She believed Krystal had been terrified, emotionally trapped, and she felt Krystal had very, very good reason for what choices she made. But by then, the damage was already done. On December 21st, less than a month after Kelsey had been reported missing, the case finally cracked wide open. Patrick was arrested. He was charged with first-degree murder, solicitation to commit murder, and 6 additional felony charges related to Kelsey's death and the attempt to cover up. Standing before the court, Patrick pleaded not guilty to everything. Meanwhile, Krystal pleaded guilty to tampering with evidence, a deal that would make her the star witness for the prosecution against Patrick. The lead investigator later reflected that in his 37 years on the force, he had never worked a no-body homicide case before. And although he was relieved to finally have answers thanks to Krystal's confession, meanwhile, as the criminal case moved forward, a separate legal battle was unfolding. Patrick's mother, Sheila, who had been briefly detained but not arrested, and Patrick's family began to fighting for the custody of Kaylee. Ultimately, the judge ruled that custody would not go to Patrick's parents. Kaylee would remain safely in the care of Cheryl, Kelsey's mother. In October 2019, almost a full year after Kelsey's disappearance, Patrick's trial finally began. Inside the courtroom, the jury would hear from several key witnesses, among them Krystal and another surprising figure, an inmate who had once shared a cell with Patrick. While behind bars, Patrick secretly passed him notes written on toilet paper, asking him to help arrange the murders of key witnesses on the outside, including Krystal, her best friend, and even Kelsey's own mother, Cheryl. Even behind bars, Patrick was still trying to control the outcome by all means necessary. The notes Patrick passed inside the jail made his intentions crystal clear. He wanted to silence anyone who could testify against him. When the evidence was finally laid out in court, the jury didn't take long. After just 2.5 hours of deliberation, they returned with a unanimous verdict. Guilty on all counts in the murder of Kelsey, Patrick was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of Kelsey. But that wasn't all. The judge handed down 3 consecutive sentences, each 48 years, for Patrick's attempt to solicit the murders of Krystal, her friend, and Cheryl. He also received a maximum 12-year sentence for tampering with Kelsey's body, plus an additional 5 years of parole tacked onto the end. In total, Patrick's sentence was life without parole plus 156 years. He will never walk free again or see daylight. Meanwhile, Krystal, whose cooperation had been the key to securing Patrick's conviction, was sentenced to just 3 years in prison for tampering with the evidence. It was a controversial outcome, one that left many, including Kelsey's family, feeling that the true justice had only been partially served. Kelsey's family later acknowledged a hard truth. Without Krystal's cooperation, securing a conviction against Patrick would have been incredibly difficult, maybe even impossible. That didn't erase their feelings of frustration. Like many others, they believed Krystal deserved a far harsher sentence. The only thing that she didn't do, they said, was swing the bat. Krystal was later sentenced to just 18 months in prison and was released in early 2021. Meanwhile, Patrick tried to fight his conviction. He appealed his sentence, but in 2023, that appeal was denied. Justice, though long and complicated, held firm. None of Kelsey's remains were ever found. The events of that Thanksgiving Day cast a long, heavy shadow over the small community, a dark cloud that hung over the Woodland Park for months, but the town refused to let tragedy define them. In an incredible show of unity, volunteers, construction workers, and local businessmen came all together. They donated their time, skills, materials to rebuild Kelsey's now damaged home, determined to give it and their town a fresh start. It was their way of sending a clear message. Woodland Park isn't defined by Patrick. It's defined by good people, people who could come together when it matters the most. In Woodland and beyond, Kelsey's story continues to remind people of the strength of a mother's love, the resilience of grieving community, and the power of choosing compassion, even in the face of an unimaginable loss.